everybody. Welcome to another edition of Sunday Unpacked. I am Monica, and I'm here today with Pastor James and Pastor Neil. How are you guys doing?
Hello.
We got a full house today.
Yes, that's good.
So we're going to talk about Neil's sermon that he preached Sunday, September 21st, and the subject was love. And so we want to just talk about God's love, the story of God's love, and
Sure.
how it is apparent in our culture and how we can share it in our culture. I really feel like it's so important to understand the culture of the gospel writers in order to feel the full impact of most of the stories about Jesus. Would you guys agree that's true?
Agreed. Yes,
And
always.
I
Well, I mean, the
think
whole
it's,
Bible, as a matter of fact.
yes, because if we don't understand the meaning in its culture, it's hard to see how we can utilize those teachings in our culture,
Right.
and in our lives. So we talked a lot Sunday, or Neil did, about the religious leadership, the Sanhedrin or the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Can you kind of, one of you, go into some of that? What are the differences between the Pharisees and Sadducees, and who are the Sanhedrin?
I mean, each of these groups is a religious sect in, the Jewish world in the first century, and there were others. The Essenes that give us the Dead Sea Scrolls that a lot of people have heard about. But these two groups were the most prominent in the culture of the first century. So you have the Sadducees, who make up the priestly group that serves at the temple along with the Levites. They were sort of in league with Rome, if you will, because Rome set up those, who was going to be the priest, who was going to be the high priest. So they had to cooperate with Rome. Sometimes that was looked down upon by the common people. The Sadducees don't believe in the resurrection. They basically follow just the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible. The Pharisees are more populist. In other words, they're among the common people, and popular among the common people group, and they were more, to add another pop word, they were more populous. There were more Pharisees than there were Sadducees. So they're all out among the synagogues, among the people, and so the people look to the Pharisees as sort of their teachers. Sadducees could be teachers too, but there were definitely a lot more Pharisees. We know Paul was a Pharisee. The Sanhedrin itself is made up of both Sadducees and Pharisees. So the Sanhedrin's the ruling group among the people of Israel, and they contain both Sadducees and Pharisees. So Pharisees do believe in the resurrection. They do sort of look to the whole Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible, the Bible for them, whereas the Sadducees limited it to those 5 books. So that's a little overview. There's a lot more, but that gives us enough, I think, unless Neil wants to add something to that.
No, I think you got it.
Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
All right. So in that, one of the scriptures where it talks about the teacher asked Jesus, it just makes me wonder, because one of them asked about the afterlife. And I didn't know if that was going to be a Sadducee trying to trap him, or a Pharisee that was actually trying to learn more, or a Pharisee trying to trap
right?
him.
Yeah, I mean, it could be either. The Sadducees could ask about it, hoping Jesus would say something that they say, "Oh, see, this is wrong," or the Pharisees could really want Jesus' opinion about something.
Right.
So we don't know. And it says teacher of the law. A lot of times that's going to be a Pharisee. There are more of them, but it could, in theory, be a Sadducee as well. I mean, it's possible.
So the Pharisees are more common. Which one do we see Jesus dealing with the most often?
I would say probably the Pharisees, kind of like James said, they're out and about, right? The Sadducees were the priests and the Levites. We talked about that in the parable of the Good Samaritan, right? The priest and Levite that walked by would have been Sadducees. Very possible this lawyer would have been like, oh, this next person he's going to list is going to be a Pharisee, right? Because they're on the same council together, but I would say probably, James can correct me if I'm wrong, but just like politics today, right? They didn't always get along, right? They
They did
probably
not.
argued and butted heads with a lot of things. And so, there would have been kind of a, oh, well, these Sadducees, they didn't stop, but, surely the next man's going to be a Pharisee. And, there could have been that kind of a, we obviously don't know, but there could have been that mindset there in that moment.
Right.
So, another part about their culture that I think is important to know is that for not only entertainment, but for part of their learning and growing and investigating things, debates were very important. Am I correct in that?
They were, yeah. They debated a lot in the first century and before that. I mean, we have record of that. So, yeah, it's very much part of the culture.
Yeah. Were either one of you on the debate team?
Well,
I was not.
Neil may not have been cool enough,
I wasn't
to be
cool
on the debate
enough.
team.
No.
Yeah.
I was, yes. No, Neil was an athlete. He was one of the cool guys.
I don't know about that.
I was definitely on the debate team. So, yeah, that was good for me and actually gave me a lot of public speaking practice before I even finished high school. So it was good for me.
Do you think it helped in marriage, raising kids and teenagers?
Probably not. Probably not.
What are the benefits of a good debate?
I think if you think about a debate, you have to think about what's the purpose for this debate.
Mm-hmm.
And, the place in which we come in contact with debate most often is when there's a presidential election every 4 years and the candidates face off. And the point of that debate is usually not the healthy exchange of ideas, right? I mean, it's not let me convince you, my debate partner, of something that you'll go, oh, okay, well, that's a good idea. Maybe I should think more about that. It's usually, how can I make you look bad so that I look good?
Right.
And then the people in front of me will, then be convinced to vote for me, not you. So it's usually not. And in the first century, there was some of that. Let's face it. I mean, I want to look good. I want to make you look bad. But there was also the idea of let's sit down and talk about the law and how we understand the law and how we obey the law. And so the debate at times could be, let's think through the application of the law and the Old Testament in general. So, if the debate is about let's exchange ideas and sharpen each other, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. If that's our sense of debate, then that's healthy. If it's just so I can win and make you look bad, that's probably not beneficial to much of anybody, right?
Yeah. I was going to say, are there ever any winners?
Well, in a good debate, a healthy debate where we're talking about ideas, everyone can win. Because we're exchanging some sense of how do we understand things. But if it's just the point is for me to win and you to lose, they're probably really not winners and losers so much. It's just how do we make each other look bad.
Yeah. Is there a way to determine immutable fact over opinion when you're in the middle of a debate? Or when you're talking over a topic?
It comes down to where do we start, right? Are there beginning points for us that allow us to decide what's true and what's not true? So for ancient Jewish culture, they would have begun with an assumption. Both Sadducees and Pharisees would begin with the assumption that the law is the law, right? It's God-given and we're called to obey it. It's our basis for understanding how we know each other and how we relate to God. If you don't have a basis, then it's a little harder to come to immutable fact. Because if I don't assume the Bible is true, then it may be harder for us to come to any kind of agreement. So the starting point really does matter. I mean, you could have debate on U.S. constitutional law, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, well, then the beginning point is the Constitution and the amendments to that Constitution. So then the starting point is this is the law of the land. Okay, how do we understand it? You might be able to come to some immutable fact. If it's just what's good and what's bad, where's
No
the
way.
starting
Yeah.
point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Jewish culture had debates over the law,
Right.
or not, I mean, in order to learn them, not in
Yeah.
order to like make people look bad.
Right. I mean, there were both of those things were going on
Right.
in Jesus' time.
So in the normal like setting, it would be let's learn, but then it could be antagonistic when they
It
turned it
could.
toward people claiming to be the Messiah, maybe
Right.
like Jesus.
Right.
So
Exactly.
okay.
Yep.
So that's why there were all these questions for Jesus. Is that assumable? I
We
mean,
see both, I think, in the story of Jesus. We see
yeah.
people who actually come to Jesus with real questions,
Mm-hmm.
like Nicodemus, who is a
Mhm.
Yeah.
Pharisee,
Yeah.
a
Mhm.
member of the Sanhedrin, who comes to
Mhm.
Jesus with a real question wanting an answer. And then we see people who are, their goal is to trap Jesus. So he has to
Yeah.
deal with both. And he has
Yeah.
to know which is which.
Well,
Mhm.
and yeah. And that would be, I'm thinking about just a normal Thanksgiving dinner, families sitting around table talking, and then all of a sudden something's brought up, and you have to know, is this person trying to stir some stuff, or do they really want to know what
Yeah.
everybody thinks? And
Mhm.
is this going to be a decent conversation?
And it can
And
start in one place and end in another.
yeah, yeah. So, Neil,
Mhm.
you started, your text was Mark 12:28 through 34. And you gave us a little bit of history, and James does this too. I think it's important to look at the author and the history of the book and the scripture leading up to the text to determine kind of what's going on in the immediate situation, if we can possibly know.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like that's something we were taught in Bible college, to know
Mhm.
what your text means.
Mhm.
What is going on in the text just before this story, and does it have any impact on how we view Mark 12 verses 28 through 34?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit Sunday as well, right? Mark's a very
Mm-hmm.
fast-paced gospel.
Yeah, very.
He's moving through this story very, very fast. We read the word, and immediately, right, he's just moving from one, like this
Mm-hmm.
happened, and now,
Yeah.
instantly Jesus is going here, which gives us a play-by-play kind of step-by-step.
Yeah.
And so looking at the chapter before, chapter 11 starts with the triumphal entry, right? We all, we talk about that. That's Palm Sunday, right? They worship
Right.
him, they praise him as he comes into Jerusalem on the donkey. We see the famous story of him cursing the fig tree. He goes and cleanses the temple, which is also another very famous, picture that we see of Jesus, right? This is where he flips the tables in the
Yeah.
in the temple, and he drives out the money changers, and he drives out the market. And then we kind of see, he's going to start teaching. And so I think one thing that's important to note, right? This is Jesus last week, right? But I mean, he is
Right.
going to the cross. He knows that. He
Yeah.
knows where he's headed. And in some of the other gospels, we see the disciples, they're trying to figure out what Jesus means by, my hour is coming, I'm going to suffer,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to die, right?
Right.
That is coming. Friday is coming. And so, we see him, he's teaching, right? He's going around, he's teaching. We know that Jesus loves to teach in parables. Chapter 12 starts with the parable of the tenants. And so we see that we talk about Pharisees and Sadducees, right? They ask just right before this, they ask about the resurrection. And so, Jesus has gained a lot of attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we look at other parts of the Gospels. There was a crowd that followed Jesus where he
Yeah.
went, right? Like,
Pretty big
he has
crowd.
to get on
Yeah.
a boat to even get away from the crowds. And so he's flipping a lot of things kind of upside down, right? Like I've talked
Mm-hmm.
with our students about this before. One of the things Jesus has been going at for a while is the Pharisees are burdening the people, right? The religious
Right.
leaders are
Yeah.
burdening the people, and they kind of have this like holier than thou kind of attitude. And so all of a sudden now Jesus is coming and he's kind of pushing back against that. Well, this isn't how we want this to go, right? And so they're desperately trying somehow, some way to trap him to be able to point and say, see, he's not the Messiah, right? And, there were false messiahs before and after Jesus. But, I heard it said once this way, like all of those were able to be disputed and proven, right? Well, they've been waiting for this Messiah. Here's Jesus. They can't dispute, they can't dispute it, but they still can't accept the fact that he is the Son of God and he is the Messiah. And some of that historically, right? And we could almost get in a whole other topic with this, right? Like, he's not the Messiah they're expecting, right? They're expecting a earthly king to come and overthrow Rome, and it's quickly apparently becoming that he's not going to do that, right? I mean, pretty soon he's going to say, pay to Caesar what is Caesar's, and that would have probably upset a lot of people that thought he was coming to overthrow Caesar. And so they are trying anything they can now to be like, look, this guy is not who he says he is. He's not the Son of God. And so that kind of leads us up to, this question that he has asked here in chapter 12.
So I feel like Jesus wasn't pulling any punches in his last week. He was trying to be as open as he was. How many times, like, was it 3 times he told the disciples he was going to die and be raised? And so, it seems like he was really trying to get his message out there. How meaningful is it that Jesus quotes the Shema to the questioner, verses 29-31?
So I'm going to let Pastor James kind of piggyback off of me because, I use the Enduring Word commentary. That's kind of my go-to commentary that I use. And, as I was studying, they brought up, right, he's asked, the Torah's got 613 laws in it. Something else that's kind of interesting to note at the time, right, they'd put all these kind of barrier laws around those 613 laws, but they kind of elevated those. And that was to protect the law, like almost to add like extra layers of protection so that you wouldn't sin, kind of a thing. And so, but they'd elevated their man-made laws kind of to the same level as God. And that was something that Jesus was obviously against, right? You're burdening the people. You're making this harder than it needs to be, right? Like, I think 613 laws to memorize and to live by, and my mind starts swimming, right? But, they want him to pick one, right, of these. And the commentary brought up, they want to see if he'll neglect a certain part of it, or if he'll, basically, right, like, do this wrong. He's going to answer this question wrong. And, he's quoting back, right, from Deuteronomy, but basically what he did was he just described the law fully, right? Like, he kind of picks one or two, right? He picks 2 things that he says, but in reality, what he's done is he's just described, like, hey, all these laws come under this, right? And it's love, right? Like, it, and he's going to talk about, I don't want to get too far ahead of what we're planning to talk about, right? But nothing else matters, right? Like, you got to love God with all you have, and then you got to love your neighbor. And then I'll kind of let Pastor James get into some of the, because that is, right, he is quoting something directly. It's not like he's just making a generalization, but that's what he's doing. He's putting all these, like, all of these come under this, because all of these are this kind of a thing.
Right. So it's a important passage. It comes from Deuteronomy 6. It begins with "Hear, O Israel," and that's why it's called the Shema, because Shema is the word "hear," so it's sort of shorthand. This is a passage that the people of Israel, the first century Jews, would have quoted first thing in the morning, sometimes the last thing of the day. So this began and ended their day before their feet hit the ground. They would say, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength." So this was very common. This debate is a common one, right? What's the greatest command? Well, for Jesus, I think it's just as Neil said, this sums up everything else. It's the beginning and the end of all things related to the law, because if you don't love the Lord your God, then why would you keep the rest of those commands? And then the second comes, of course, it's a different passage from Leviticus 19:18. So this is the beginning, and this is the heart of what they believed, that you're going to love the Lord your God, that he is one, and you're going to love that God and only that God.
Is the teacher of the law being genuine in his response to Jesus? Like he's approving of Jesus' answer? Is he being genuine or sarcastic?
Right, like we gotta look at the answer, right? Like, and we don't know. There's a lot of things I think Pastor James would agree, right? We just don't know, and I think Pastor James and I would be willing at those times to say, we don't know exactly how this worked or what it looked like,
right?
But you read his response there, right? And this is 32. And the scribe said to him, "You are right, teacher. You have truly said that he is one, and there's no other besides him. And to love him with all the heart and with all the understanding and with all of the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself, is much more than all whole burnt offerings and sacrifices." I mean, there doesn't seem to be any, like he's angry that Jesus answered this way, right? I mean, he's just kind of confirming, like, yes, you've answered correctly, that this is, this is what it comes down to love the Lord with all that we have, and then to love one's neighbor as ourself. And I think even Jesus's answer back, I think kind of almost confirms that too, right? I mean, like, Jesus doesn't snap back with another, right? He's the perfect Son of God.
Right.
We have a tendency to snap back, right? But he probably did a little better at that, right? For the right reasons. But, I mean, from what we can tell, I mean, it seems like he's just acknowledging, right? Like, yes, this is true. I mean, you've answered correctly.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, Mark says, when Jesus saw that he had answered wisely. So it seems like that's, I mean, if it's just a smart alecky or he's trying to trick Jesus again here, I don't think that would be called a wise answer. So it seems relatively genuine. I don't think we're told it's not. So we'll leave it there.
Yeah, I had to ask because my commentary, and I have an NIV Life Application Bible, or the Application Bible. It says the teacher of the law assumes a superior position from which he passes judgment on Jesus's teaching. But Jesus is the one who knows who is near or far from the kingdom of God. So what does Jesus mean by his response about the questioner being not far from the kingdom of God? Was that a genuine, I mean, I know it was Jesus' genuine answer, but was it kind of like not putting him in his place, but showing him that, yes, I know I'm right? Or
I think it kind of goes back to what Pastor James just said, right? Like, when Jesus saw, he answered wisely. I mean, it seems that Jesus recognizes something that he says. And I think when Jesus says that, right, like that, being, you are not far from the kingdom of God, we think again about what Jesus is about to go do, right? Jesus knows he's going to the cross. Jesus knows he's about to pay the last sacrifice. He knows that nobody else knows it, right? But he is going to complete the law. The law is about to be completed in Jesus. And so, those 613 laws are about to go out the window and for them, right? We just talked about that. They live their lives by these 613 laws, at least in my mind. And so, but these things remain, right? I mean, we're going through the story of God's love, right? Love is going to remain. Love the Lord your God with all you have, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And so I in my mind, it's like Jesus saying, he's not far from the kingdom of God, right? Because it's about love, and Jesus is about to really show that and kind of complete that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say the same thing. I don't see him saying you're not far from the kingdom of God as some kind of insult or putting him in his place, unless you're interpreting that as saying, well, you're close, but not quite there. But I don't get that sense, maybe, and it's one of those things where trying to read into Jesus' tone, which we don't hear, is really hard to do,
Yeah. I do like that the teacher of the law pointed out that loving your neighbor as yourself is more important than all the burnt offerings and sacrifices. And then I think that Neil pointed to 1 Corinthians 13 to support the idea that loving God and our neighbor is more important than religious practices.
Right.
So just even in 1 Corinthians 13, what are some examples of religious practices that are mentioned there?
Yeah, I mean, so you look at, here, let me flip over, what what Paul has to say here.
Well, Neil's getting there. I mean, the things he lists are tongues, prophecy, mysteries, knowledge, faith.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not like those things are garbage, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Those are things that were given by God to the first century church as a witness to his presence among them. So it's not like he's saying those are all just like empty things that don't really matter.
Right.
And then he says, if I give all I possess to the poor, which, I mean, Jesus told the rich young ruler, sell everything you've got and give it to the poor. So that's an answer from Jesus himself. So he's not saying, hey, these things over here are empty and don't matter, but the really important thing is love. He's saying even these things that are hugely important in the life of the church are less than love. Right? No, go ahead, Neil. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and then you go back to Mark, right? Like what Mark's account, right? That the scribe, this lawyer, right, when he's responding to Jesus, you know, he says that, you know, you've answered right, to love the Lord, right, and then to love one's neighbor as oneself is more important than religious practices, whole burnt offerings. And that would have been a huge deal, right? Because I mean, the sacrifice in the temple, right, the burnt, like that is how they are made right with God. So I mean, he's just said that loving God and then loving your neighbor is more important than all of those things. And you know, and going back to what Pastor James just said, like these are things like, you look at what Paul says, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, right? And but I have not love, I'm just a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. So it, you know, it doesn't matter if we can speak in these, you know, these tongues. We're prophetic powers, right? I mean, we see so much prophecy in the Bible, and we, you know, there are scholars and doctors, you know, who have more degrees than I have, right? That sit around and try to figure it out. You know, we could have this power to understand those things and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, but if I don't have love, it means nothing, right? And so, I mean, we look at, you know, I said on Sunday, we look at the religious practice of a day, like going to church, you know, reading our Bible, going to Bible study, taking communion, you know, as a believer, right? Those are some things. Giving to the poor, giving to the church, volunteering. And I want to make sure, like, you know, we're not saying those things are bad, like, right? Like, you know, we're encouraged in the Bible to do those things. But the point is that I think what Paul's getting at and what Jesus is getting at is none of that matters if I don't love God with all I have and if I love my neighbor. Like, I could attend church 52 out of 52 Sundays from now until the rest of my life, but if I don't truly love God with all I have, and if I don't truly love my neighbor, well, then none of that matters. It doesn't matter that I went to church. It doesn't matter that I've opened my Bible. It doesn't matter that I went to Bible study. And so it makes us kind of stop and check ourselves, right? And be like, okay, do I love God, right? Like, that's the first most important thing. And I've been doing a podcast for our students, like a quick devotional. We just went through the book of James. Well, James's whole point is putting your faith into action. And so then we can start going through this, right? If I truly love God, then I almost not, and I don't like to use language, right? But it should lead to me loving my neighbor, right? It's not going to make me, but it's going to lead me to that. And I mean, I think we're going to get into it a little bit, but like, it's kind of hard to say, well, I love God, but then not love others like a neighbor, right? Like, those two things kind of don't go together. And again, I think that goes back to, you know, I could say I love God and go to church every week and do all these things, but if I don't have that neighborly love, well, then once again, well, then it means nothing, because it's an empty love, right? It kind of goes to, I go to church almost as a status, right? Well, I went to church, but that love isn't there, right? We need to have that first.
Yep.
Did you have something, James?
No. I mean, I think that's exactly right. I mean, the point is, it's not that, well, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, I'm only a resounding gong. No, it's if I don't have love. So all those things and all the things that Neil mentioned matter tremendously. And we're not saying that they're somehow unimportant. It's just that we have to have love for other people, or we're totally missing the point on everything else.
Back in that day, basically they're saying you can be a member of the Sanhedrin, you can be a Sadducee or a Pharisee, but if you don't love the people that you're supposed to be serving, you say you love God and you're serving the temple, but if you're not serving the people and loving the people, then what's it matter? You can have all the tassels on your robe you want, but if you don't love the people, and I think that's good. I was also going to say, kind of in response to what you were saying, Neil, the closer you to get to God, the more you love God, and the more time you spend with him, the more you're going to become like him and reflect his image. And part of his image is loving other people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a natural response, a natural reaction to spending time with God and to loving God.
That love
would be
it'd be like overflowing in your life.
Yes,
right? Like it'd be like
exactly.
a cup. Like if I'm plugged into him and I'm getting that love from him and I'm loving him, that love should go somewhere, right? It shouldn't just stay inside of me and like, well, I'm just going to keep this for myself.
Right. Yeah.
And it should just naturally overflow in the way we talk to people, interact with people. And I'm sure all of us have these moments, right, where you see somebody in need, and maybe before you didn't even look twice at them, but you get to know Jesus and you draw closer to him, and all of a sudden you notice that person, right? And it's like man, I need to do something, right? And that's not always necessarily us, but that's the love of God, right, working in us to draw us to that. I mean,
I was just gonna ask the question too, does this kind of love come naturally to us? But I think in our humanness it probably doesn't, and it's Christ in us, God, and that is what makes it doable, makes it happen. What do you think?
Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, there are moments when I think love wells up inside of us, and there it is. And there are times when if we did not have the power of God's Spirit at work in us, we would fail miserably to show love to the people around us.
I would agree with that.
Sometimes it depends on whether I've eaten lunch or not,
It is getting that time, isn't it?
It is.
John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Has the sacrificial love of God in Christ Jesus become something that we tend to take for granted, or we forget the enormity of it at times?
I think we can. I mean, I think it's something that, I've kind of been struck by. Like, I remember, when I was back in high school and growing up, like the Tim Tebow craze, right? Like, he put John 3:16 on his eye black, and then it was, it was like the most searched thing on the internet that night or whatever, right? Like, I think it is such an important verse, right? But one that's very well known to where, I've always kind of said, it's kind of like, well, love the Lord, for God so loved the world, right? We can say the words without really truly stopping and thinking, okay, what am I saying, right? Like, what am I reading here? And I think that, especially, I know I've struggled with this in the past, right? We have this tendency, right? For God so loved the world, he sent his only Son, that whoever believes in him, right? But we have this tendency, right, to kind of withhold that love. Like Pastor James said, like sometimes we show it, but then other times we don't. It. But then I'm constantly reminded and convicted of, well, I'm glad God didn't do that with me. Right. Yeah. He didn't look at me and say, well, this love's for these people, but, and I think we're going to get into that as we talk about this other story, but, that love's for all of us. And I think we can sometimes take it for granted in the sense of like, well, I'm good, I'm covered. Right. But then we can kind of forget really what we're when we talk about loving others. Right. And we can kind of forget that or really miss what that meaning is. Cause once again, I mean, a lot of people could quote it right now, but I think sometimes we can quote it really fast and then not even stop to think, okay, what am I reading? Right. And, and this is the story. I mean, I don't know how many weeks into the year we are, right. But forget, the story of God's love. This is a major part of it because it says it right there. For God so loved the world that, he sends Jesus.
Yeah. Neil asked the question in his sermon, how do we respond to God's sacrificial love? And, that sacrificial love, is that something that we need to exemplify to the people around us? Is that the love? Sacrificial love we're supposed to show to others. Love God and love others.
Yeah, that's the heart, right? I mean, that's who we say we are as a church. That's what it means to be a follower of Jesus. If we're not doing that, then we failed.
Yeah. What are some examples of how we could sacrificially love others? Like, give up our daily Starbucks and support a child overseas, or just think of different things.
I mean, I think there's a lot of things.
A lot of ways we can do that.
I read in a devotional, one of my devotionals I read at home, I read this idea that, like you kind of said, Monica, when we plug in, right, we draw closer to God and we spend more and more time with him, right, it should overflow in our life. But it's this idea of like, too, and I've even seen this in my walk, when you really draw near to him, you kind of start to stop looking inwardly and you start to look outwardly. And it is kind of like, like a sacrificial love, but it's not like a begrudging sacrificial love. Well, I guess I'll give up my daily star, but it's just like a, I don't even know how to describe it. Maybe one of you can describe it. It's just, it's like a natural thing. Just like, you know what? I want to do something, right? Like there's this situation. I want to do something about it. And it's not, once again, it's like, well, I guess I'm a Christian, so I guess I'll go and do this thing, right? It's just, it's a natural thing.
Yeah.
And it's trying to describe the peace of God, right? Like we've all been through that, where we're in the middle of a hurricane and it's like, well, I feel more at peace than I ever had before. And it's hard to describe that to somebody, but
sure,
it's the same thing. Like I don't even, like I said, I don't have words, but it's just something that happens that as we do the first part of this, right? Love God with all we have and draw near to him and learn more about him and spend more time with him. It happens. And it's just, it is a sacrificial love, because that's what, Jesus laid down his life, and it just happens.
I think it's that we start living our life for whatever we're doing. We live our life with the attitude of service and love towards others.
Right.
It's not necessarily, I have to make a conscious decision to stop overspending on Christmas gifts and I have to give more. That may be a part of it, but it's also going to be from the heart. It's going to be a conviction inside that says, like you said, it kind of comes naturally inside. You're like, I don't want to spend a lot of money on worthless things that people are going to throw away in 2 months. I would rather do Operation Christmas Child, or I would rather give to Angel Tree, or I would rather give to the nursing home or something like that. I think it's just, you get these acts of service or these thoughts of how you can show love in your community and in your surroundings, to your family, to your church, to your community. I just think it comes almost, like you said, almost naturally, just of an outpouring or outflow. So anyway, so love your neighbor. What does it look like, and who is our neighbor? Luke 10:29 through 37 was your second portion of scripture, Neil, that you discussed. And in this case, it is a teacher asking Jesus about what is the greatest command, or Jesus asking the teacher, what's the greatest commandment? And after the teacher says, and Jesus is like, yeah, you're right. And then the teacher is like, well, then who is my neighbor? And I think it's interesting reading it after the revelation of Mark 10:33, that love is more important than religious practices. What would cause a priest and a Levite to walk past an injured, almost dead person? Aren't they both representatives of God to the people in their culture? Shouldn't they be overflowing with love?
Yes, they should, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of described it Sunday. It would kind of be like a preacher, right? Like it's there. It's there. Probably not perfect, right? But it's a position, a person of religious office, right? A person of religious standing, especially the priest. And this is the great thing. Jesus is talking in a parable, right? He's telling a story. And I even kind of said, I think the crowd would have been pretty shocked, right? That these two men cross on the other side and, almost didn't even give them the time of day. And in my commentary brought up, there's a plethora of things we could say as to why they did that. Like, they were in a hurry to go perform some religious, something, right? I got to go. I don't have time to deal with this. I got to go do this, right? And because by law they would have almost been required to stop and to help. I mean, from their office, but they obviously don't in this story. And one of the commentaries I read too, there, as the crowd is listening to this, right? So this priest goes by and he doesn't stop, and then this Levite goes by and doesn't stop. I would think that they probably did a lot of what we do when we watch a movie, where like we're trying to piece together, okay, what's next? Like we're trying to come up with, oh, I bet this is about to happen, right? And there's several things they might have thought, right? Like, oh, this next person, like we said on Sunday, is going to be a Pharisee, right? And the Pharisee is going to be the one that's going to stop, and he's going to save the day. Jesus has been going at the religious leaders, right? And so a lot of them probably would have thought, well, it's just going to be a common Jewish man, like just another Jew, right? It's not going to be somebody of religious office. It's just going to be a common, just somebody else, right? And I've actually got the section pulled up here, talking about the two religious leaders. It says, think of all the excuses they could have used, right? Well, this road is too dangerous. Well, he might be a decoy for an ambush, right? I've got to go to the temple and perform my service for the Lord, right? So, I think Jesus is kind of, right, he's using these, and that's why I wanted to break it down a lot on Sunday, right? He's painting a picture that these people would have just like, they would instantly known. To us, it's like, well, the road to Jericho, right? Like we got to know a little bit more about that road to understand the story. But, he's clearly building up to something, right? And he has this, he's, almost, I wouldn't say like it's a fishing story, right? Where he's being like, oh, my fish was this big. Like, but he's painting this picture, right? He's setting this up, and it's, like I said, I want to make sure we don't get too far ahead, but I would love to, this is one of those scenes where I would have loved to have seen the crowd's reaction when he says, and then a Samaritan. Yeah. I mean, because it would have been, in my mind, it would have just been stunned silence. I don't think anybody would have known what to say, because it is like, it was the least likely choice in their minds, plus like 1,000, right? Like, I mean, it probably was not even on their radar. I guarantee there was nobody in that crowd going, oh, he's going to say it's a Samaritan, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and once again, I go back to 29. This is Luke saying, but he desiring to justify himself. I mean, the lawyer is wanting to make himself feel pretty good, or, once again, he's trying to get Jesus to say, well, you don't have to treat these people that way, but you can treat these people that way, and you'll be good, but you don't have to worry about these people. And then he brings up, I brought up later at the end, it's almost like my commentary brings up, it's almost like he can't even bring himself to say the word Samaritan. Well, the one who showed him mercy. I mean, he can't even, it's almost like he can't even bring himself to say, the Samaritan's the one that treated him like a neighbor. And so, there was a lot of, and I don't know if Pastor James wants to get into it or if it would be beneficial for our discussion, right? But I mean, Samaritans and Jews, they despised, each other.
Right.
Hated each other. I mean, is a better word. I mean, racially, I know I shared on Sunday that some rabbis would teach to not help a Gentile woman give birth, and they would have considered Samaritans to be like the worst. They just did not get along, and this would have been completely shocking that this is the one that not only stopped and had compassion, but did all that he did, right? He went above and beyond, took him to an end. And, hey, I will come, you make sure this man gets well. I will pay whatever difference there is. Like, I will come back and settle whatever I need to settle. And I think Jesus has proven a pretty strong point, right? I mean, he's, like you talked about, he didn't pull any punches, right, in that week leading up to his death. And like I said, we don't know if this is the same story or not, but he's not pulling any punches here either.
No, he's not.
He's going for it.
Yeah.
You mentioned that in verse 29, he says he wanted to justify himself. The root of that word is righteous. So he wants to look righteous. That's what he's what he's after, and he's thinking Jesus is going to say something that's going to make him feel better. And Jesus does just the opposite.
And it's, Neil, was it you that said Sunday that it's almost like he was asking, who do I not have to love?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
He's wanting it to be, I can treat these people neighborly, but I don't have to treat these people as neighbors.
Right.
Basically tell me who I can exclude from this law of, who is my neighbor. Once again, trying to basically find out, who do I not have to, we talk about sacrificial love, right? Who do I not have to extend the sacrificial love to?
Am I back on? No.
Yep.
Yes, I am. Sorry. Edit that out. Oh, we didn't talk about the man that looked dead. He would be unclean. And the teacher and that they would have to spend a lot of time purifying themselves if they touched this sick or dead man. I'm gonna have to pause a second. I got this.
Just take a second and come back to
I had not thought of that.
Yeah, we just need to start there.
Him looking dead, I had not thought of that. Well, half dead. That's what my version says, half dead. I mean, so then the ceremonial laws would not have applied, right? Because he's not dead.
Well, they don't know. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So he looks half dead. So is he? And if I touch him and he is dead, then I'm toast. I can't. If I'm on the way to, he's on his way. Well, he's going from Jerusalem to Jericho, so he's would have already served.
Yeah. My commentary doesn't have anything about that part of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to say something about it. I hadn't even thought of that.
Well, I mean, you don't want to be unclean, even if you're not going to Jerusalem.
I'm so sorry. I get this spot in my throat. I turned the fan on. Can you hear it?
No, and I can filter it out. There's a setting where I filter out background noise.
A lot of times, if I get a little warm, it does it. So, we didn't talk about the priest.
So just go back to, Monica, so we haven't talked about, where you said that, and then I'll just come back to that. It'll work.
I am so sorry. Okay. So we haven't talked about the fact that if the priest or the Levite had touched the person that was bleeding and almost dead or injured, they would have become unclean.
Right.
So what would they have had to do? I mean, it would have been a hassle for them to show God's love. They would have just been unclean, right?
Right. So we talk about it describes him as half dead. Well, is he dead? Right. Is he not dead? He looks, you may not know from a distance whether he's dead or not, but if you go over and touch him and he is dead, then you're unclean. So you don't know. So there's a whole process, a purification process that involved multiple steps, and nobody wanted to do that unnecessarily.
Right.
But again, you see someone and you don't know if they're dead.
You should probably
check. It's not exactly good to just say, well, he might be dead and I don't want the hassle, so we'll just leave him. I mean, Jesus is painting them in a pretty bad light here. So, and on purpose, Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Jesus' sacrifice and the gift of the Holy Spirit allows us to be set apart and yet present and relevant in our culture. And we can get our hands dirty while serving in our communities, unlike the Levite and the priest. They weren't willing to get their hands dirty.
Right.
How closely tied are love and mercy? And can we show mercy if we don't have a genuine love for people? Is it even possible?
I think when we're talking about true love and true mercy, right? Like in the example I like to use with our students is, right, in the Greek, we've got multiple words. Like I'm going to get a little, we're going to get into that here a little bit, right? Like, so we got different words for love, and each word would have conveyed a different kind of love or different, like a brotherly love or, an intimate love, right? There's different words there where we have the word love, right? And I like to use the example of I love my wife and I love French fries, right? I love Mary and I love McDonald's French fries. But clearly I love Mary more than I love McDonald's French fries. And so that's where our English language does not really convey that very, very well, right? It's just one word. But I don't think we can have mercy without true love, right? Like if I might in spite, or, if I don't love somebody, say, well, I'm going to show you mercy, but you better just be glad I was in a good mood or something. Well, we didn't extend mercy because we truly loved that person. I mean, we just kind of did it, right? So you could make the argument that our heart's not in the right place. When we look at what Jesus did, right? Jesus was a selfless, sacrificial love, given out of his love for us, right? A genuine love. And that was mercy.
Right.
And talking about 1 Corinthians 13, going back to what Paul said, I mean, agape is the word he uses there, right? It's a love that's without changing. It's a self-giving love that gives without demanding or expecting repayment. And I don't think we can give true mercy without having that kind of love, right? I don't think we can extend that where it's this selfless, without demanding, no repayment. Like I
Right.
forgive you, right? Like, and I brought this up Sunday too, and I bring this up with our students, and Pastor James and I even talked about this before we started recording, right? Doesn't mean we're going to be best friends, right? Like I don't have to be best buddies with you. I don't have to be best friends with you to show love. I think sometimes people are like, well, I don't like that person. Okay, well, we almost can't even get to that, right? Like, I don't necessarily have to like that person, but I still have to love that person, right? And I think that is hard. We all have people in our lives. I have these people where it just seems like we don't get along, right? Like, it's not even like we necessarily anything happened, right? We just butt heads, and it's just kind of that thing. But we are still called to love like Jesus loved. And so I think they are very, very tied together when we talk about the sense of true love and then true mercy.
Well, I think there's times where we feel like love is a feeling, and it is, but it's more than just feeling. It's also a decision at times. We make the decision to show love for other people, and I think that's a big piece of this. And I don't, I think all these things where we're displaying something of what God has placed within us. We're pointing to God through who we are, and being created in the image of God means we're doing that. And God's mercy is always based on his love. So if we're really showing the nature of God, then our mercy as well is going to come from love, even if it's a decision to love that we don't feel like doing. So we have to sometimes separate out that sense of love being just a feeling. It's more than that. We may have to make the decision to love, and therefore to show mercy, even though we don't feel like it.
Yeah. I have always liked Micah 6:8.
Sure.
He has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God.
Right.
And as you said, those are all decisions that we have to make.
There's going to be times in life when we don't feel like doing each one of those. And that's not an excuse to neglect them. So sometimes real character is displayed in doing something that we don't feel like doing. And that can be choosing love, even though we may not have that feeling in the moment.
Well, and I think that gives us an example of how to address some people whom we are going to find it hard to love.
Yep, and we will.
Someone
and we'll have a hard time showing mercy sometimes too.
Well, someone who has hurt my child or my grandchild, that's not going to be easy. And I'm glad that God gives us this direction in Micah 6:8. So, what have been your main takeaways from this sermon and this teaching and the prep for this podcast?
I think it kind of combines a lot of the things you guys just said, right? Like, you look, and I tied it back to our world today. I mean, you look at the world today, and just some of the things that have happened in the last several weeks, right? It just seems like it's dark, right? I mean, just dark, crazy things happening. And, I shared, like, Mary's a teacher, right? I've got 2 little girls that are going to be Anastasia's in preschool and she's going to be going to school, and I see things like school shootings and all these things, and it's scary as a dad and a husband, like, that those things are happening. And I was talking with somebody the other day, you didn't have like the code red drills and stuff that our kids are just used to, like it's just a normal everyday occurrence. So you didn't have those
right
20, 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and so I think this was just a great reminder for me. We've been talking about the story of God's love, right? And how God shows his love through this story, like all the way back to the beginning with Moses and Abraham and creation. And I think this week it was just kind of this, as we look at this world, right, that is so desperately searching for something, which we know is Jesus. We know that they need Jesus. But as we think about God's love, right, that he's shown us, is how do we then put that into action, right? Like he's given that to us, and we've been exploring that. Here's how God shows his love. Here's how he's given us his love. And I even kind of started my sermon Sunday with that. I would say this is probably one of the easier legs for us to see, right? Jesus coming in the flesh, right? Like we know that part of the story. We talk about it on Easter. We talk about it at Christmas with the coming of the baby. But this one for me was, we now have to take that love, right, that God showed us. He doesn't withhold it from us. He doesn't pick and choose what day he wants to love us, and it's given to us. So then how do we respond to that love, and how do we show that? And I think Jesus is very clear here that we have to love God, right, and love our neighbors. And I would say right now, it is hard to love everybody. I mean, it always is, but I think especially right now with so many different views, and here's what I think we need to do, and even as we see hostility towards the gospel, I mean, we know we have the answer, right, and we just want to share Jesus, and there's people that feel that they need to tell us that we're wrong, right? And so it's just it's so hard in those moments to not try to defend Jesus, right? Like Jesus we need to defend our faith, but we don't want to be hostile in our response to those people, right? We want to,
right.
I think that kind of feeds into right? We want to show that love,
for sure.
Right? We want to show, hey, this love I have been given, right? It causes something in us that we can't describe. It turns into this, right? And it's me. And again, we don't have to be best friends with those people. And that might sound weird to say, but I can still look at them and say, in my mind, I'm going to choose love, right? Because Jesus loved me. Right. And sometimes my mom taught me, and I will get a text after she listens to this, because she will know that she is right. But she would tell me, sometimes that's just not saying anything at all. And I think sometimes that's hard, right? And it might just be sitting there with a smile and being like, I'm not gonna respond to that text, or I'm just gonna decide to be silent. But I mean, I think that was the big takeaway. Because getting to work with our students, just to share for a second, I've shared this before, like I just have so much hope as a student pastor as I see our young people and their openness to the gospel, their excitement about the gospel, that right, we still have a mission, right, to take Jesus into the world. And I see our kids doing it, and I see them just buying in, and they're on fire. And so there's just part of me that hopes that we can join all together, right, as the church, and we can just continue to shine that light, and to just take this love we've been given that we can't earn, that we probably don't deserve. I mean, I know we don't deserve it, but he gives it anyway, and take that to people that are so desperately looking for it. And they may not know it, but you never know if your act of love today plants a seed that 5 years from now leads to a relationship with Jesus.
Right. Monica, I'm going to take, I know your voice is struggling, so I want to finish this up for you, just because it's hard. The key here really is whether we are going to, since we are created in the image of God, be the ones to communicate who God is through the love that we have. And I mean, that to me, over and over, that comes back in this story. We're calling this the story of God's love. And here is, I mean, in some ways, this is the heart of it. We'll get to the cross. I mean, it's hard to say that's not the key, but in terms of Jesus' teaching, this is where we get that, right? This is God, the story of God's love. And Jesus is saying, if we're going to be followers of him, and if we're going to display God's image to the world around us, then it's going to have to be through God's love. So, we'll finish that up. And then next, we're going to talk a little bit about Jesus' love scene pointing to the cross through communion as he develops the Lord's Supper, that is his body broken for us, his blood shed for us. So we'll talk about that Sunday. And then we'll come back next week and talk that through in our podcast. But just a reminder, if you have questions about any of that, text them to 404-565-4498 or email them to questions@taylorvillechristian.com. Put it on the Connect card on Sunday, or if you'd like, just ask one of us and we will do our best to answer that. And we will talk with you more next week. Neil, thanks for joining us. It was good.
Yep.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, sorry for the coughing.
It happens.